It is man's nature to probe into the unknown, to cross frontiers. Yet until a short time ago, we had not yet crossed the closest frontier of all, just 100 miles from any point on Earth, the frontier of space. Beyond that frontier, where outer space begins and Earth's life-giving breath has ended, is a realm as vast as time itself, mysterious, promising, full of wonders. Even after rockets finally brought this vast domain within range, fundamental questions had to be answered before men risked their lives to go there. Could spacecraft systems be built to enable a human being to survive in the space environment, so different from that of Earth, which nurtures human life and growth? Before spacecraft could be launched safely with men on board, medical scientists had to draw upon the most advanced skills of remote medical practice yet acquired from the profession of medicine on Earth, had to adapt the slim body of experience gained in ships, aircraft, and distant explorations on land and ice and sea. But outer space was still an untried ocean. Proceeding cautiously, first in simulations of spaceflight, then in actual flights into space, those first few astronauts and cosmonauts accepted the challenge. They proved that men could survive with proper life support systems in the new environment, at least for short periods of time. And they opened yet another unexpected frontier. From experience in space and the new techniques of space medicine have come new capabilities and designs for the improvement of health services on Earth. Let's review some of the techniques which have been developed in space medicine, then briefly preview some possible developments in the life sciences of the future. Even as unmanned Sputnik and Explorer satellites were soaring through space around the Earth, men were finding some answers and ever more questions concerning man's ability to survive there. An astronaut could carry with him his own mini-Earth environment, a world in a space shell. The spacecraft and the space suit could provide him with life support necessities such as atmospheric pressure, oxygen to breathe, heating and cooling systems, drinking water, waste disposal systems, and food. But could he stand the high G forces of liftoff and re-entry? Would weightlessness itself cause sickness or inability to function? Would the strange environment and artificial atmosphere cause nausea or dizziness, or damage the delicate organs of the inner ear? What would be the effects of spaceflight on a man's lungs and heart, his blood pressure and circulation, his body fluids and cells? Would his temperature rise or fall dangerously? How might life in space change muscles and bones, nerves and glands? Space medicine specialists made countless tests and observations before men were launched into space, applying Earth medicine techniques to simulated spaceflight conditions with all the many precautions available in controlled tests. Weightlessness could be achieved for 30 to 40 seconds at a time by flying an airplane in an arc to create an effect something like the sensation you feel in a fast-falling elevator. Large man-rated centrifuges duplicated the G-forces occurring during launch and atmosphere re-entry. Tests were conducted with animals in short rocket flights and in vacuum chambers to learn the effects of decompression. Other tests were conducted with men in pure oxygen at reduced pressures for varying periods to measure psychological and physiological responses. Additional simulations of weightlessness were conducted in water immersion, and in prolonged bed rest, which produced effects on the body similar to those believed to result from weightlessness, such as loss of muscle protein and bone minerals. Also, tilt table studies were conducted before and after bed rest periods to learn more about the reflexes which normally prevent blood from pooling in our extremities when we stand up. These reflexes are less efficient following even a short period of bed rest or spaceflight. Sometimes low blood pressure results and causes faintness or dizziness. And even before the first man was rocketed into space, the first significant breakthroughs were made on the new frontier of remote medical care. Although the flight surgeon's medical console was only as remote as a few hundred feet from the subject. The first really remote health supervision in the United States space program came with the one-man missions of the Mercury program. During these, physicians on Earth maintained surveillance of the pilot's condition as the spacecraft passed overhead.
Negative. No symptoms whatsoever. I feel fine. Over.
Biopotential signals were fed into a single telemetry unit on board the spacecraft and transmitted to the medical personnel below. Baseline data from pre-flight and post-flight examinations of each pilot were on record. The system enabled a physician to use his skill and experience in managing a patient at a location, outer space, quite remote from his own. But like the flight simulations and tests on the ground, a Mercury mission was more an exercise in health observation and physiological measurement than in health care.
120 feet.
Following Mercury came the two-man missions of the Gemini program. By now, more sophisticated facilities for crew training and baseline data gathering had been completed at the Manned Spacecraft Center. This man-rated centrifuge with a 50-foot arm. Giant vacuum chambers simulating the environment of spaceflight. And many more instruments and medical monitoring capabilities. During Gemini flights, onboard bioinstrumentation and remote monitoring capabilities were also more complete than on Mercury missions. Body sensors, such as those picking up signals from the heart, respiration, blood pressure, and pulse, were connected by leads to a bioinstrumentation harness worn under the astronaut's spacesuit. Other new sensors enabled physicians in Houston to analyze the crewman's brain waves recorded while he was asleep, or performing exercises inside or outside the spacecraft. A magnetic tape recorder was capable of simultaneously recording 7 channels of biomedical data for post-flight analysis.
Roger, we copy.
For heart studies, in addition to the usual electrocardiograph readings, a small microphone called a phonocardiographic sensor was attached to the chest to record mechanical heart sounds, along with the electrical signals from the EKG sensors. Any changes in timing could be studied. The 2-week-long Gemini 7 mission in particular paved the way for the missions of the Apollo program. In Apollo, medical studies and remote monitoring during the Earth orbital phases of the 3-man missions were similar to those of Gemini, but more operationally oriented. Pre-flight and post-flight examinations added a bicycle ergometer for exercise stress tests, and cardiovascular investigations were conducted on the ground with this lower body negative pressure device, which replaced tilt table tests, and measured changes in blood pressure and circulation resulting from exposure of the lower torso to a lowered air pressure. During Apollo lunar landing missions, 3 separate remote areas at times were monitored simultaneously from Houston. The Lunar Orbiting Command Ship,
Roger, verified.
the Lunar Landing Craft,
25 degrees per second, 25.
and the astronauts in portable life support systems as they worked on the moon. Apollo's most spectacular contributions to remote health care and medical monitoring came from the moon missions. It has happened so suddenly, it's still hard to realize that physicians on Earth could actually give medical advice to men on another celestial body, our own bright natural satellite.
These skids, the back end breaks loose just like on snow. Come on back, John.
There are several examples, but let's replay that bit of man's history that occurred as astronauts Shepard and Mitchell climbed Cone Crater. On Earth, it was late winter 1971. On the moon, the extreme summer heat of the long lunar day, cool enough inside the spacesuits, of course.
Okay. Well, press on a little further, Houston, and keep our eye on the time. Okay, and so right now we have a 30-minute extension.
At the Manned Spacecraft Center, physicians carefully observe the metabolic costs of the exploration, comparing data from pre-flight ergometer exercises, oxygen consumption by telemetry from the backpacks, and heart rate data from the biomedical harnesses on each man. Metabolic output was verified by measurements of the amounts of oxygen and coolant water remaining.
And I'm going on medium cooling for a minute. Okay, and Al and Ed, why don't we take a little rest here for a minute?
Both Shepard and Mitchell heart rates going up to about 120 while they were traveling uphill. With the higher rates, this occasioned the rest stop.
And again, about 17 minutes later.
Well, wait a minute. Maybe I'm being deceived. With this slope, the sun angle is entirely different than it is on the flatland. The craters look sharper in the shadow. Okay, it's making EAV stop. Okay, let me pull off. I can stop and rest here for a minute. Well, I tell you, we're really going to get a panorama. We got a tremendous one here, Houston, already.
Shepard's heart rate rose to 150. Mitchell's 128. This occasioned a second rest stop.
The remote monitoring of men on the moon will probably hold the long-distance record for some time to come. And facilities for communication and data management were quite versatile. In the Mission Control Center, biomedical data could be written out on a strip chart recorder. And any kind of spacecraft or crew data that the flight surgeon needed could be called up on the computer and displayed.
Control, Magnato.
But even on the lunar landing missions, actual health care capabilities were limited. Except for some prescription medicines, there was no way for crewmates to render more than first aid. The next manned space program, Skylab, with separate 3-man crews orbiting the Earth on missions lasting up to 56 days each, has greater opportunities for remote health care and onboard medical studies. It helps to have more room, and Skylab is about as spacious as a 3-bedroom mobile home. This permits larger pieces of equipment to be carried on board for in-flight use, to supplement pre-flight and post-flight data, and to record the exact times that physiological changes occur. And greater use can be made of equipment. Bicycle ergometer exercises, previously used only pre- and post-flight, on Skylab permit the in-flight measurement of crew members' metabolic rates, at rest and when performing calibrated exercises. The device records the energy being expended while a metabolic analyzer records the volume and constituents of exhaled breath. These tests show how prolonged weightlessness affects work capacity as measured by oxygen consumption and carbon dioxide production. Other Skylab equipment and instruments were designed to study phenomena such as the effects of zero gravity on the sense of balance, Monitoring equipment on the ground includes sleep stage displays. The objective evaluation of sleep is based upon the electrical activity of the brain and the motion of the eyes. An electroencephalograph displays brain waves, and an electrooculograph indicates rapid eye movement called REM, which is associated with dreaming. For monitoring Skylab crewmen while they sleep, an improved system was developed called the Sleep Monitoring System. Instead of attaching electrode sensors onto the skin of the head, the subject simply puts on a cap. The cap contains electrodes for the eyes and brain, and an amplifier which fits on top of the cap. The amplified signals go to an analyzer, and from it, the stages of sleep are telemetered to Earth. In addition, all the data are recorded on tape for later analyses. In remote health care, Skylab comes close to offering a clinical medicine setting. Diagnostic tools include such standard clinical instruments as blood pressure cuffs, thermometers, and stethoscopes, as well as medical laboratory equipment for blood analysis, urinalysis, and microbiological examinations. For therapy, there is a wide selection of drugs, both oral and injectable, for the treatment and prevention of infections, diseases, and allergies. There is a minor surgery pack so the crew can care for minor lacerations, and a dental kit. Years of research and flight experience led to improvements in nutrition and food packaging, from this on Gemini and Apollo flights to this on Skylab. Despite these improvements in health and medical facilities, Skylab bioinstrumentation systems and medical experiments will probably not answer all of the important physiological questions that exist concerning longer duration missions in space. Someday, there may be a space station with a crew of several persons orbiting as long as 12 months before replacement by another crew. In later years to come, there may be space bases, space factories, and space hospitals accommodating 100 or more persons. There may be long-duration manned voyages to the planets, to the asteroid belt, and beyond, lasting several years. And it is probable there will be a research base and observatory on the moon. Such future spaceflight developments are more easily foreseen today than was landing men on the moon just a few years ago. Most of the basic technology for long-term space travel is within our grasp. The health needs of future space travelers, however, have not been precisely delineated. Much more will have to be learned in the areas of medical research and clinical medicine. As a result of these considerations, NASA is developing a comprehensive new system. It will make possible improved onboard medical support of the crew and more complete medical studies. It will provide the tools for adequate diagnosis and treatment of injuries and illnesses, as well as a laboratory in which life scientists can conduct advanced physiological and clinical measurements and analyses in flight. And if such a system can be developed for remote applications in outer space, it can perhaps be equally beneficial for remote areas on Earth, whether such areas be located in inaccessible rural and mountainous regions or in a metropolitan ghetto. Many such areas are economically remote, since the people who live there do not have the money for conventional health services and lack access to conventional medical facilities. Today, there are no long-duration space stations or well-populated communities on the moon where we can test and improve new systems for remote health care. Therefore, in partnership with the Health Services and Mental Health Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, NASA is creating a test base, a prototype in one of the remote areas on Earth. Such a working model will facilitate the design of improved healthcare systems of the future for both space and Earth. In the model, there are 3 levels of health service facilities. First, a Health Services Support Control Center. Second, a local health services clinic. Third, a mobile health services unit, in effect a health mobile, plus portable equipment and emergency transport. At location 1 is the Support Control Center in an existing, well-equipped and staffed hospital or medical center in the general vicinity of the remote area to be serviced. The Support Control Center is somewhat analogous to the one at the Manned Spacecraft Center. At location 2, and comparable to a remote space station or lunar base in facilities, is the local health clinic. More than one local clinic may be set up in a medically deprived area. Each will offer on-the-spot health services and highly skilled, specialized services rendered remotely from the Support Control Center. This simulated local clinic was kindly made available by the governor and members of the San Ildefonso Pueblo in New Mexico. Based at location 2 in the remote area will be one or more health mobiles with medical facilities like those of the local health clinic, but on a smaller scale. These might be comparable to a small space laboratory with equipment and health-related capabilities such as those we have seen on Skylab. Also in the remote area will be dispensary ambulances and possibly fire department vehicles for emergencies. In some large cities, allied health personnel have already been trained for this kind of service. In our prototype system, physicians at the control center will monitor the care and treatment of patients in the remote area. To get quickly to the scene of an accident or a patient at home, medical personnel with portable equipment will work out of the local health clinics and health mobiles. For instance, a nurse might quickly respond to an emergency call, give first aid to the injured person, then radio or phone for assistance and examination facilities. Physicians in the control center will give their advice and directions by means of two-way audio-visual systems. The Support Control Center will be responsible for assignment of patients to the appropriate health services facility, for their transportation, admission, and care as required, and for keeping all medical legal records. The center will maintain computerized statistical data on individual patients, as well as area-wide information of value in preventive medicine programs. And perhaps most important, the center will have specialists able to apply their special knowledge to the care of many more sick and injured human beings than would otherwise be possible. The local health services clinic normally will be the place the patient comes first if he is sick or injured. His medical history may be recorded at an automated data terminal, stored in a mini-computer, and displayed as needed by the physician or his assistant. There will, of course, be standard physical examination equipment. Treatment tables, lights, litters, thermometers, stethoscopes, blood pressure devices, and clinical laboratory analyzers. And much of the biomedical equipment developed for spaceflight also will be used at remote locations as well as at the control center. The two-way audio-visual communication between a local clinic and the control center will use picture, facsimile, data link, voice, and all the well-proved space medical telemetry signals we have observed in space programs to date. Physical examinations can include many of the spacecraft devices and instruments we have already seen. For instance, the bicycle ergometer, with additional exercise stress tests added to those of metabolism and work capacity. This would provide new insights to improve diagnostic accuracy in regular periodic checkups. The negative pressure device, whereby the upper body remains in normal air pressure while the pressure is lowered in the sealed container enclosing the lower body, may have new clinical medicine applications. There are improved methods of analyzing body fluids and new tests of blood and urine, which can be made quickly by a technician. A miniaturized laboratory system developed with the Atomic Energy Commission for space use is being adapted for use on Earth. Called the Gravity Zero or GO analyzer, it permits as many as 16 clinical tests on one small drop of plasma. There are other new tests to detect and identify viruses. Microscopic views can be televised to the Support Control Center. From enhancement of satellite photography of the surfaces of the Moon and Mars, space scientists have learned how to use computers to improve the clarity and information-yielding characteristics of the televised pictures. Similar computer techniques are now also applied to clarify X-rays of the human body. Other techniques make possible improved three-dimensional measurements of body organs. Capabilities are increasing for health care and monitoring in the most remote locations. For example, the sleep monitoring system developed for Skylab is being adapted for several purposes. The new disposable neurological cap with soft sponge electrodes and the simple preparations appeals to patients of all ages. In remote area health services on Earth or in space, specially trained allied health personnel and sometimes physicians will care for their patients under the guidance of specialists at the control center. New opportunities for medical services and health care can be expected. And who can say what future innovations in the sciences of life may come from the partnership of medical applications on Earth with medical care and research on the newly won frontier of space?